Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other reviews of Stephen King adaptations in my Stephen King playlist, and there will be spoilers today. This movie is 41 years old, so if you've not gotten around to seeing it throughout all that time, firstly, why? And secondly, you're 11 films behind at this point. Speaking of which, I am planning to cover all 11, but I don't know at this point how painful that's going to be. So I reserve the right to drop out at any point. But you know what? I conquered the Howling review series. I conquered the Ring review series. So I'm backing myself to do this. I've got self-belief. So the Children of the Corn movie was directed by a guy called Fritz Kiersch. You might remember him from such films as Fatal Charm and Crayola Kids Adventures. This actually started its life as a short story in Stephen King's Night Shift collection, and it's probably one of my favourite short stories that King's done. Not that I've read anywhere near all of them, but I remember thinking when I was reading this that it wouldn't take much to make this story into a movie, and here we are. So just to give you a quick idea of the plot, we've got a young couple who are travelling through the cornfields of Nebraska. I mean, travelling on a road between the cornfields, But to cut a long story short, or should that be to cut a short story short, they end up in a small town called Gatlin, where it turns out all the youngsters there have murdered all the adults because they are being mind controlled by some kind of demigod that lives in the cornfields. It's known as He Who Walks Behind the Rows. So once this adult couple realise they're in this town and they're kind of trapped because I think the car breaks down or something, they've got to get out. They've just got to try and escape as best they can, but they've got like dozens of children trying to kill them. And yeah, that's basically the story. One of the reasons I really love the short story is that it really brings home the fear of what it would be like to be lost among the corn rows. This is a really beautiful landscape, but also a very dangerous one. I mean, if you put a blindfold on somebody and walked them 10 minutes into the corn, spun them around 3 times, and then asked them to find their way back to the road, if they started walking in the wrong direction, they could be lost forever. I mean, this is a really large place. It just goes on forever. I think there's like 10 million acres of cornfields in Nebraska alone. And that's not even the biggest state for it. I think Iowa is the biggest. I think that's got like 13 million acres. That surprised me actually when I looked this up the other day, because I would have thought that Nebraska would have been the big daddy for cornfields, but apparently not. But whereas the short story splits its time between showing you the fear of being in the corn and the fear of being chased by murderous kids, the movie pretty much focuses entirely on the latter, which is a real shame. There is an early scene where one of the rare good children is running through the corn and the sun's glaring down on him and you can hear his heavy breathing and you can just sense how scared he is being in this frightening environment, this corn. But it's a very fleeting moment. It doesn't last very long. There's an entire section from the short story which doesn't make it into the movie where the husband character is running left and right through the corn, and you just realise that he's getting himself into a worse and worse situation by getting himself more and more lost, but we don't see that in the movie. But given that this is the first of 11 movies, I imagine that they probably course-corrected this balance as the films go on, right? Hopefully. No? Technically, this film is set in Nebraska, but it was filmed in Iowa. Not that it makes a blind bit of difference, but there's definitely a great sense of place with this. This film really encapsulates what it would be like to be in this part of the world. When I'm watching Children of the Corn, I definitely get a lot of things through the screen on a subliminal level. I almost feel like I can smell apple pie. I can sense the autumn sunshine. I can smell farm equipment and corn. They did really well with the locations for this. So the film scores heavily there, and it also scores heavily when it comes to the villains. I really like the fact that we never see the demigod or the demon. We get a brief glimpse of something sort of moving under the ground, but you can't quite see what's down there. But you never actually see 1 inch of the actual demigod, which is good, because it just keeps that sense of mystery. And what would they have done with it anyway, even if they tried to show what it looks like? But given that there's still 10 films to go, I'm sure at some point they will have an actor in a dodgy costume with 2 horns peeking his head up above the corn, and it's going to look absolutely terrible. If you read a lot of Stephen King, you might have heard the rumour that there's a theory anyway that the demigod in Children of the Corn is the same character who is in The Stand, Randall Flagg. But it's one of those things where if you want to believe that's the case, then it works. But at the same time, if you don't want to believe it, then that's absolutely fine as well. I like the human villains as well. The main two are called Isaac and Malachi. There's also a girl villain in there who's decent value, but the main two are Isaac and Malachi. These are weird looking actors who play these characters, although I suppose that's what you would want for characters like this. It's one of those situations where you can't tell if these are actually child actors or whether they are 25, 26-year-olds who are just pretending to be kids, so who knows. But they're pretty good villains. They are kind of freaky. The scenes where Malachi and Isaac just talk to each other are very interesting because that's when you usually find things out about the situation and the history of the town. But they're both cowards, both of them. Isaac is like the conduit between the other kids and the demigod, and he kind of uses this as an excuse to never really get his hands dirty with anything. So there's a prologue to this film where we see the kids murder the adults to begin with, and but whereas most of the kids are getting stuck in, putting their necks on the line, Isaac just stands outside the shop looking through the glass, like not getting involved. He's keeping his own arse nice and safe, you know. But Malachi's not that much better, so he's meant to be like the enforcer, the Bond henchman kind of a thing. But even though he does kill one or two people here and there throughout the movie, there are other situations where he totally bottles it. Like, there are scenes where he might have like 5 or 6 kids with him, Malachi, and they'll spot one of the adults that they're trying to chase down, and Malachi will just say, "Seize him!" And then the kids will rush past Malachi to try and get the adult, whereas Malachi will just stand there, like not getting involved. He's nice and safe. He's just going to stand at the back, like the commander at the rear of the battlefield kind of a thing. So yeah, the villains, they are good, but they're also complete cowards. And their deaths are definitely one of the weakest aspects of the movie. The worst thing about this Children of the Corn film is the last 10 or 15 minutes where it veers away from the short story to mostly bad effect, I would say, and the deaths of the two villains are a case in point. You just don't get to see much. You'd want a bit more with the deaths of these two. I don't know if they were holding back a little bit because the characters are meant to be kids, but the plight of Isaac is particularly bad. They sort of hang him up on this cross because the kids betray him towards the end, and the demigod sends some kind of magic his way, but Isaac just seems to get swallowed up by a special effect. It's really weird. It's bad, actually. It's really bad. It's like somebody in the post-edit just got a digital marker pen and just scribbled up Isaac's body to cover him up. And it's like, what? Why are you putting that crap effect in there? Isaac comes back for one more scare, so there's no point like pretending to kill him with this stupid looking special effect. It's just really awful. Going back to the opening scene, I do think it's a shame that this is included in the movie. I kind of feel like I would have preferred it if we just started with the two leads driving towards Gatlin and then we keep the threat of the children a secret for a large portion. So in other words, I would have liked it a bit more like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where there's a bit of a road trip and then Leatherface doesn't even turn up until the exact moment that he kills somebody, but that takes quite a while. That being said, the Children of the Corn prologue is still really good. It's really visceral, this scene where the kids just go into this cafe and start taking out all the adults. There's a real nastiness to the violence. I kind of feel like the film's trying to make a big statement with this opening scene. And yet, by the end of the film, the violence to me has just been completely toned down to give us a kind of tame ending. But the opening scene in the cafe is really, it's a bit of an eye-opener. Like at one point, one of the kids is shoving somebody's hand into a food blender. Like they're not just killing the adults, they're being really cruel about it as well. So I've got to admit, it does get the film off to kind of a bang. The two leads who are travelling towards Gatlin, they're played by Linda Hamilton and Peter Horton. Linda Hamilton at this point would have been just 6 months away from her breakout stardom with The Terminator. I can't say Hamilton's always been one of my favourite actresses. I mean, she's all right, but not one of my favourites. I guess I'll always have a special place in my heart for her to a certain degree just because of Terminator. Peter Horton is probably better in this film than Hamilton, I'd say, and yet he never really went on to do anything. I've not heard of any of the other films he appeared in, and he did a little bit of TV, but probably not in main roles, if you see what I mean. You can actually make the argument that Children of the Corn is probably Peter Horton's standout moment, which is kind of a shame because he's genuinely a decent leading man in this. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie, especially the first hour and a bit. It's quite a vicious, realistic sort of movie for quite a long time. And then it goes a little bit lame in the last 10 or 15 minutes. I don't really understand it. Like, the film is just really gritty and suspenseful for a long time. You get all these great chase sequences and moments where characters are hiding out in houses, and there's a sense of mystery when the two leads find the dead body in the road. There's so much good content here. A great scene involving a gas attendant who ultimately ends up getting murdered as well. There's lots to enjoy, and then we get to the last 10 or 15 minutes when it almost feels like we cross over into TV movie territory, and I don't really understand why things went a little bit sour in the later stages. It's just weird for me, but it's not enough to ruin the overall experience. I could absolutely watch this film again in the future and still enjoy the journey of those first hour and 10 minutes, say. But it's still a positive experience for me. As of right now, today, I'm enjoying reviewing and watching Children of the Corn. That may change a few reviews from now, but as of this moment, this very moment, I'm in good spirits. So normally at this point of the video, I might show you a copy of the film that I've just watched, and lo and behold, I do actually own this movie. And the reason I say it like that is because I don't think I've been showing an awful lot of physical media recently on the channel, but I do have not just the first Children of the Corn movie, but the entire first trilogy on Blu-ray. So I got this quite recently. It cost £30. Now, I will admit I didn't actually spend a penny. So I took part in this competition in March through work. It was a steps competition. So what you had to do is you had to try and walk the furthest out of any of your colleagues throughout the month of March. And you had to download this app, and your phone would sort of keep track of all the steps you've done, etc. And out of 24 people taking part, I came first. I walked 561,000 steps in March, which works out at 21,000 steps a day. So believe me, I went through a lot of pain to get hold of this, because the prize was £30 in Amazon vouchers, which is basically the prize of this. So yeah, I got this box set because I knew I was going to be doing these reviews quite soon. So let's see what we've got here. That's the original film, absolutely packed with features that I've not yet checked out. This is part 2, The Final Sacrifice, and part 3, Urban Harvest. Obviously, I've not seen 2 and 3 yet, so I'm not going to have to. I won't have to spend a penny on these movies, in other words, until I get to part 4, which is nice. Right, shall we get to the bag of terror and see how I'm going to score this movie? So we've got 1, 2, 3.5 Michael Myers carving knives out of 5. I almost went to 4, but I don't think it's quite that good. I think the end of this film spoiled its chances of getting a really good score, like 4 or 4.5 or 4 or 4.5 or whatever. So there we are. We've finished our first Children of the Corn movie. Things are going okay so far, and we'll see what number 2 holds. But until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.